Oh. Hello and welcome to Launchpad PPL Momentum. Thank you guys very much for joining us. We have some amazing industry professionals and artists joining us today to talk about their experience of the music industry and more specifically Launchpad PPL Momentum. Shall we start with a little introduction? Whiskas, would you like to start us off?
Hi, I'm Whiskas, real name Sam. I sort of established the Launchpad program last year, at the start of last year. Initially, it ran through Music Leeds, which is an organisation set up in Leeds to support music and does lots of different work, supporting organisations, artists and people trying to get into music industry. But that's now kind of all grown to support artists and music industry people across the whole of Yorkshire through Launchpad and our kind of like out of Leeds name, which goes as Music Local. So that's what I do now. But previously I was in a moderately successful band about 15 years ago. I ran a relatively successful record label. And I've also had stints running a music venue and a tiny little bit of artist management, but I didn't really like that.
Lovely. You're like, nah, not for me, not for me. Yeah. What do you mean moderately successful? I saw some of your music. I loved it.
Moderately successful. I mean, not many people have heard of us nowadays.
Regardless. And Stewart, would you like to take it away?
Hi, my name's Stewart Baxter and I come from Hull and I play in a band called Life, who are from Hull. I've previously worked at a place called The Warren, where I ran the PRS Foundation talent development project, Warren Records, which was a label and a free studio and a record shop for young people, alongside a counselling and therapy section and resource centre for young people. And I've got experience of kind of like applying for funding and also receiving funding and also sitting on the panel for funding. So I guess that's why I'm here.
Lovely. And Cath?
Hi, I'm Cath. I run an artist management company in Liverpool called Deffo. One of the artists that I manage is a band called I Saw and the Jinx, who were awarded the PRS Momentum Accelerator fund in conjunction with Liverpool City Council last year. On top of that, I also do some assessment advising for not only the Launchpad, but also I've just done the last round of Momentum as well for PRS Foundation. As well as artist management, I work quite heavily in artist development. So really kind of going through stuff like this with the artists and the bands around Liverpool and the region. And we're currently just opening a music venue. Well, we were supposed to open it in April, but obviously that didn't happen. A music venue over in Birkenhead on the Wirral in Merseyside called Future Yard, which not only is a music venue, but also industry skills and artist development hub too. So a little bit of everything from over here.
Lovely. There is it seems like all round there's a little bit of everything, which is lovely. And Becci.
Hi, yeah, I'm Becci. I'm the Senior Grants and Programmes Manager at PRS Foundation. So I lead the team that runs all of the programmes, which includes PPL Momentum Accelerator, our talent development programme, and many, many others. I've worked in music for a long time, mainly doing artist development initiatives or international showcasing. I've worked on a lot of kind of international showcase events and worked at labels and events and festivals and yeah, loads of different places.
Lovely. And I'm Kally, and I'm an artist myself and have had history with receiving funding and applying and all of the joys that come with funding. And I'll be chairing this lovely panel. And just to start off, Whiskas, what is Launchpad? For people who maybe have heard of it, because it was previously, a few months ago, there was a panel, and last year it came about. But for people who've maybe heard of it but don't know too much about it, what does it offer?
Yeah, so Launchpad is really a program to support emerging artists and also emerging industry professionals as well. So Launchpad actually supports sort of the non-performing people as well, people who aspire to be managers and record labels. But I think today you're mostly going to focus on the artist side of thing. And it's really designed to kind of give give artists a step up, a helping hand, a bit of an opportunity in whatever way, will hopefully be of most benefit to them. And it's really open to any artist at any genre. And we consider artists at lots of levels. We do see sort of say emerging. So if they've got, as we'll go on to talk about PPL Momentum and Accelerator, if they've got teams, there are other funds there for them. But it can support really new or artists and artists really early in their career. As you mentioned, it was born out of our project Music Leeds. So it was established in Leeds and operated across West Yorkshire throughout 2019. But we've really overjoyed to get some funding from Arts Council England through National Lottery, which has allowed us to expand it across all of Yorkshire. So as we've just reopened Launchpad, it now means that any artist, any musician, rapper, producer can apply to that based across all of Yorkshire. And what it does is we have three main ways of support. One is through mentoring and industry advice, like one-to-one with other industry professionals. And that's really tailored around the artist and what they need. So that can be industry advice, how to plan releasing a single, how to, attract interest from other parts of the music industry, how to market your release. Or it could be more creative. We helped a couple of artists last year sort of develop part of what they wanted to do around technology. A couple of jazz artists actually who wanted to experiment with Ableton, and we hooked them up with musicians there. Or just general kind of career coaching, just where they want to be and sort of helping to vision a lot of that stuff as well. So we really work with them around what's most beneficial for them in that respect of the mentoring. So that's that. Another way is through supported recording. So we can support artists to make new recordings. Obviously, a lot of artists have it under their own control nowadays to make recordings. But what we can support them is to maybe extend themselves more than they would be able to do otherwise. So, go into that slightly better studio, think a bit bigger with the kind of producer that they might want to work with. And again, that's been really successful. We've helped artists kind of collaborate in the studio, go into those bigger studios. I think one of the artists we're working with this year has connected with a producer and mixer over in America that we've been able to help fund. So yeah, that's recording. And then the final one is a little bit strange at the minute, is live opportunities. So in normal times, we had connections with multiple festivals across Yorkshire. So last year, artists performed at things like Live at Leeds, Inner City Electronic, Tramlines Festival, Leeds Jazz Festival, and lots of others. We made lots of connections. We're always looking for those opportunities. Obviously, things are a bit strange this year, but we're finding as many ways as we can to provide those kind of like live opportunities for the artists who come through the program. So this weekend, in fact, we're doing a collaboration with Millennium Square, which is like the big open air space in Leeds city centre. So last year we hosted an all-day event there where we had sort of 15 artists play throughout the day. But what we're doing instead is we're curating a live stream, like a live performance video on Saturday that will go out through their social media channels, so the artists will still kind of get exposed to that new audience that is different to them. And we're also, because it's the kind of main square in the centre of Leeds, it's got one of those big screens like a lot of city centre squares do. And so I think it's a bit technologically beyond us to get it live onto that big screen on the Saturday, but what they're going to do is put highlights of the video on throughout August. So hopefully it might even be better that like constantly throughout the summer, all the artists who have kind of would have played on that stage on one day are actually going to get their music, their live appearances exposed to people over the coming months. And we've got a few things like that in the works with some of the festivals that aren't taking place, about how we can get an artist and connect them with their audience, really.
And it will all be home recordings. Well,
that's an interesting one, actually, because as sort of lockdown is easing, we're looking at lots of different ways in which we might be able to support the artists. So I think we've done 3 live streams so far since lockdown happened. 2 were very much from the homes. The third one, although actually some of them were recorded sort of in studio environments actually, and one actually recorded one of the last ones in a venue as well. So the one that's going out on Saturday is a bit of a mix. It's mostly at home, but I think there's a little bit of variation. Some of them have had access to more professional, but as we look at some of the other opportunities and we move throughout the rest of the year, as venues are opening up, we're looking at more opportunities, either filming live sessions in venues, and lots of other things. I mean, to be honest, with the way lockdown is going, and obviously we don't want to get bogged down into any of that, there's whole, what is possible is really opening up. One of the things there's been is, while there has been some live sessions filmed in video in venues to date, there's been a lot of caution around the government guidance up until the last month, really. But now that's starting to lift. We're looking at what we can do.
Yeah, especially in Millennium Square, that would be amazing. I mean, it would be very weird to be like, hello, and nobody's there because it's such a large space, but I reckon that would be beautiful still. And then you mentioned earlier that it could be of any levels. So somebody could receive Launchpad. Could they receive it if they haven't released anything, if they haven't necessarily got a social media presence? Does that get taken into account?
Yeah, so the things we take into account are the music, the quality of the music, and the sort of the plan and the thinking of the artist as well. So what we're looking for is the artist to kind of have an idea about what they're trying to do with the music creatively and career-wise as well. So that, if we give them the support through any of the ways that we do, it's going to have a benefit, But that could be an artist at a really, really early stage. You say specifically social media. If there's no social media, well, I think we'd be looking to know kind of why, if there's a particular reason, because if that's something they haven't got round to yet, then we might look at, it's more likely that the support would get to them, when they had set it up, for example. If you've not quite done as much as you can, then we'd probably look to support you when you have done, a lot for yourself. But if you're kind of pushing it and you've got a good plan and you know what you want to do and you're identifying where the gaps are and your music's great, then it's different to when we talk about PPL momentum, where there's needing to be at a certain industry threshold. We don't look at it in terms of that. And again, it's also, we look across lots of different genres. So last year we supported like a bassline producer, rappers, a woodwind quintet that does kind of Balkan Keltmer music, thrashy rock bands and lots of various things in between.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant because it gives people who are starting up and coming artists an opportunity to not only get funding but also receive the help to move to the next stage with funding. For example, Becci with PRS, with a Momentum Accelerator and Momentum Fund. Is that the similar case, or do you have to be at a certain level? Do you have to have a certain team or amount of people within your team?
Yeah, so PPL Momentum was the first fund that was created 7 years ago, and it was launched in kind of response to a resistance by industry to take risks on artists. And so there was a gap there that we felt, along with Arts Council England, that we could into the next stage of their careers. Now, for the momentum level, you need to have at least one team member. We would expect you to be kind of, getting lots of press across the UK, touring across the UK festivals. You would, depending on your genre, obviously, your social stats will be different. Your grime artist is not going to be the same as your folk artist, and you capacity venues. But depending on your genre and kind of where you are, then you would need to have a team. Whereas with Accelerator, it's more about you're kind of getting that regional base, you're looking at kind of national exposure. People are interested in that. You'll be playing like headline shows regionally, you'll be playing festivals, you'll be having, blogs and press and things like that. So, but you don't have a team, you would have interest, or you'd be having conversations. You're not at that early stage that you would be potentially where you could come in at Launchpad. You need to be a bit further on down the line. Yeah.
And then an example of a team member, for some people who may be a little confused, what does that mean, a team member?
So it's somebody who is invested or backing your career as an artist. So whether that is a manager, whether that's a label, whether that is a promoter, whether that's a PR. So it's anybody kind of in that wider network that can help you and your career take it to the next level. So it could be anyone within that kind of group, essentially.
Yeah. So it would kind of almost be a brilliant thing for somebody to receive, fortunately, hopefully, Launchpad funding and then move to the next level of Momentum Accelerator or PPL Momentum. And then that would move them. Because it's almost like the tipping point for PPL Momentum and Momentum Accelerator, from what I understand.
Yeah, so if you think of it kind of like, I always describe it as kind of like a pyramid, I guess. So you kind of like, you know, you have your Launchpad here, kind of developing creatively, you know, helping you get into moving forward, kind of exploring your kind of creative ideas and things like that, along with your professional development and mentoring. Then you kind of, you know, you're playing gigs locally, you're getting your foothold, you've got that kind of regional buzz about yourself, you know, and so then Accelerator then can take you up to that momentum level, which is national, and then beyond that, then you have momentum where you really need this between £5,000 and £15,000 of support to just really kick yourself off across the top of that mountain, you know.
What a lovely place to be. And just speaking of money, what does it offer? What does Momentum Accelerator or PPL Momentum or Momentum itself offer to people who apply for funding?
Oh, sorry, you broke up a bit there. My signal's terrible.
Oh, sorry.
But, I think I got what you said.
Yeah.
So in terms of Accelerator, you can have grants of up to £5,000. It's specifically for those based in Yorkshire.
Sorry,
and
it's specifically for people based in where?
Yorkshire for Accelerator. Okay. So you're only eligible if you're based in Yorkshire. There will be around for those who are based in the Liverpool city later in the year, but we'll discuss that another time. For this round, it is for Yorkshire specifically, and you get support of up to £5,000. And there will be kind of further opportunities through kind of work with Whiskas and the team and music leads around kind of additional opportunities for those artists to kind of showcase their work and things like that. Sorry, continue. And in terms of PPL Momentum, it is between £5,000 and £15,000. So it's a much larger grant award. But that's the reason why we would expect to see kind of more people in the team, more investment, more kind of trajectory for growth, and more kind of more momentum. Not the best way of describing it. However, all UK-based artists can apply for that.
Okay, and then for the Momentum Accelerator, is there a reason that it's only Yorkshire-based?
Yeah, so as part of our kind of research to across our main Momentum fund, we found that there was a lot of artists that were kind of at crucial tipping points, but they didn't necessarily have the kind of access to finance. They had maybe lack of industry infrastructure, kind of less kind of peer support around them than you would if you were really based in London, where you have that kind of constant feedback from. And so we recognised there were specific gaps across the different regions of the UK, and so working with Whiskas and the guys there, we thought that we would focus specifically on Yorkshire to kind of help address that gap that is currently there.
Would you say that the gap was improving?
I think there is a gap. I think it is improving just through all the work that the guys have done in Yorkshire already. I think that there's more support in terms of that kind of up to £5,000 that we can give, especially with the networks and the links that we have for those artists.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate the gap between north and south, and the way that certain musicians or funding schemes don't always apply or are given to up north artists. I say that as a southerner, but I'm not proud of that. But yeah, and Stu, yourself, because you also received funding and you have a large history of funding with your band Life. Would you like to just go into that? At what stage were you? Were you at the Launchpad stage or the Accelerator stage with your band and your music?
Well, we've obviously have been at Launchpad stage, but unfortunately for us, Launchpad didn't exist back then. So I'm really, really happy that it's here now for the artists that we support and we work with. We applied for Momentum funding on before our first album, and we got declined but at that point we was getting radio play, we was touring, but the application wasn't strong enough. The important thing I think for people to realize about PRS foundation funding and any funding is that if you apply for it, that the whole process of applying for it is really, really beneficial to your development. And whether you get it or not is not the end of the world. Actually, the process means that you've sat and thought about your business plan. So if you get declined, that's okay. But also, what I learned with PRS Foundation early on was that they're very, very good at feedback. So just if you don't get the funding, don't go in a mood about it. Just go and ask them why. Why didn't I get it? What was not working? Why don't you think I can? And then they'll give you some really good feedback about how you could make it stronger. And we did that, and we went away and we carried on working hard as a band. And then we went back and applied a year later, and then we got it because we was in a stronger position. So, and that meant we could record our debut album, which was really vital to us, because before that, all we could afford to do was record singles and release singles, because we didn't have the money to dedicate to an album. So for us, it was one of the linchpins in kind of launching our career into the next level, alongside other things, and other kind of funding and other ways of making money, like merchandising. I think, what we realize and what we know is that all of these things work hand in hand, and one of these things isn't going to make you a living in music. You've got to have a number of different outlets and ideas that will create and monetize your band or your artist or your music, so you can so you can have a career. And this, what the great thing about Launchpad and this specific funding is that it's kind of ring fenced in Yorkshire, and for me that's a really exciting thing, because I never wanted to leave Yorkshire and I never wanted to leave Hull. I wanted to be an artist in my city, and I wanted it to be some sustainable. And I didn't want to move to London or wherever else, So this is a really good opportunity for people in this area to access it. And we've been sort of shouting about it and telling people about it, and I think it's really helped us. So I think it will really help others.
And how was the experience of receiving funding? The process of once you had been awarded funding, was it okay working well with the funding company? And how was the studio time? And what knowledge did you have to give that you were actually doing your part?
Well, in order to get something like Momentum, and Launchpad might be a little bit easier, but it shouldn't be easier. It shouldn't be easy. None of this stuff should be easy. It should be difficult, because you should have to work for it. So, but they've made it as accessible as possible, so you can apply for it in a way that is not discriminatory to your if you can read or write, or if you can do a video application or whatever. For us, we got to the point when we got Momentum that we'd had to work so hard on the plan that when we got the money, it was already planned out. We had a very, very detailed schedule, very detailed budget. But the great thing about working with PRS Foundation specifically was that things changed throughout our recording process and throughout the album process. And, at first, I think we just presumed that they would, we would be in trouble if we changed stuff or something. But then we realized we weren't at school, and actually these people are here to help and support music. And they understand that it's a very, very complicated landscape for music. So, if things change, then just discuss it with them. And they were happy to, they weren't going to take the money off us. They were just going to help us reassign the money wherever it needed to be spent. But for us, it worked really well, and they let us get on with it. And they visited us once while we were recording the album, and we had a chat and we did some press, and everyone had a good time. But they just gave us, they gave us the money because we'd already overcome that hurdle of like, they trusted in us and we delivered. So, that I think that's important for people to realize, that people are not going to give you money unless they trust that you're going to deliver. So get your music and you as a business to the point where people can invest in you like any business. And then if they think they're going to get a result that delivers, then, potentially they're going to give you money.
Yeah, completely. And Cath, as the founder of Most Deffo, you've actually had a few of your artists apply for funding schemes. How was that process?
I think it's exactly what Stu said, really. It's you don't always get it. And, it's kind of like when you don't get it, you recalibrate and you see exactly what it is that you need to do, and push yourself harder to kind of get as much under your belt and as much progress as you can without getting that funding, so that you're a stronger applicant the next time. For us with ISA and the Jinx, particularly with the Accelerator, it's not like applying for Momentum where you need to kind of prove that you are at a certain level and that that you're at that tipping point basically, and that you need that money to kind of progress and to make a success of your career. I like to think with that application and for that particular band that what we displayed is that the potential was there, and that there was a very clear development plan, and that there was a trajectory. I hate saying that word. I don't know why I tried to say it. We were at a point when we were writing that application that we were just about to release their second single, which seems really, really early. But they had such a wealth of material that they demoed, and that they'd done so many shows across Liverpool and the Northwest. They were headlining shows, they were selling shows out. So we kind of knew what the plot was for that second single. And it was like one of those things where it's like, if the timing of this was a little bit different, if we'd applied for this in like 6 weeks' time, when we know how that single's done, are we going to be, in a better position? But what I hope that application did was kind of go, well, this is what we're going to do with this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that, and it did kind of like pan out like that. So we're receiving that Accelerator fund. That was 5k. What it did for us is it gave us the backbone, of our finances to progress forward. They were a relatively new band, so the royalties weren't coming through yet. Generally, royalties, once you start getting radio play and you're getting those live royalties through, it can take about a year to kind of hit the bank account. So we kind of knew all of that was coming, and what we wanted to do with the Accelerator funding was try to get as much out of it as possible. So we used it as the backbone to record a single, an EP, and then kind of accidentally another single as well from those studio sessions. And we also used it for some of the promotion of that as well. So the promotion for that first single that kind of was covered in that period. And what it allowed us to do was kind of like explore the kind of setup of that band, I guess. So we used it to pay for a producer to come over from Dublin that we wanted to work with, who we wanted to kind of see if that was the producer that they were going to work with for the album, like further down the line. And it kind of started to pay off. But I think that the main thing is there were plans in place. It was, we know exactly where they're at. We know where we want to be. We have measurable kind of outcomes in place in order to be able to demonstrate that as well. And they were kind of, at that moment, they were being played on Six Music. They had like national press. They were getting booked to play in London and across different cities across the UK. So, for us, it was I don't think we could have done any of what we've done without it, to be honest. And but I think the important thing was for that point in time as well of when the bands were awarded it was validation. It was there's other people that think that there's something here. It's not just us. And I think that was really, really key. And I also think for that particular band, it was a really big confidence boost. And it was a really big kind of like, right, okay, let's put our all into this because people are behind us, people are backing us. So that for them is, you know, it's kind of not just the financial support that's important. It's the being noticed, like being seen as that band that comes out of your local scene, and the ones that have that kind of like the hunger for it and the ambition and are looking at what infrastructure they need as well. So for ISO and the Jinx, I met them through mentoring on an artist development program. So they were already of that mind frame that you need to be in when you really, really want to, you know, when you really, really want to kind of push forward and see things a bit more professionally. Whereas I think there's lots of bands that I've seen applications, particularly for Launchpad and even for Momentum as well, where you're like, you know, there's no evidence of research that's been done as to kind of how things work and how you can kind of be the best at what you are. And I think with them, it was very, very clear to me when I picked up them from management is that they were really, really eager to kind of, you know, to build all of what they needed to build in order to kind of do things properly. So I think that's a really, really important factor, is kind of like, it's those artists and those bands that demonstrate that they are willing to put the work in to kind of appreciate how everything does work in order to build the band up.
Yeah. And as a music manager, what did you tell your artists to consider when applying? How did that kind of help the music management side and also the funding experience?
Well, we kind of sat down and did it together. So, I mean, everything that we do is a collaboration. Like, I don't need them to do anything that they would need guidance for. And I also don't do anything like just on their behalf, because they're really like not that type of band. Like, everything feels a collaboration, from, you know, kind of putting together campaigns for single releases to tour plots to shall we do this show over that show, that kind of thing. Everything is we sit down and go through. So I think for the Accelerator funding in particular, we already had the plan in place. And I think that's probably just a bit of a rule of thumb as well, is like, don't tackle an application for any of these opportunities as if you've not thought about it away from those application forms. So we already had all of that plotting done in place, and we kind of just had to, you know, consider which bits were more important in order to kind of get them under. The biggest thing about doing like any funding application is trying to get the word count down. I think that's an art. Like, I genuinely do. Trying to get as much information into very small amount of characters. Sometimes it's characters rather than words as well. So I think it's just, you know, we had to kind of like really hone in on what the key things that we were saying were going to be the victories, and you know, and just kind of pull them out and do it together. But I think it's, just make sure that you've really, really thought about your own trajectory. So I've just done it again. Your own trajectory and like got it now, got it down. You know, your own journey. Like, think about it. Like, what is it that you need to do particularly, rather than just kind of like a tick box exercise of saying, we need to get PR, we need to get radio, we will get some press, this will result in this. You know, it's think about what it is for that actual band, or like that actual particular artist that they need in order to build their audience. So we just kind of worked through it together in the way that we always do. Like, that was kind of right towards the start. It's been the same ever since, really. It's all just very collaborative.
And I think you made some brilliant points with regards to you may receive £5,000 of funding with a certain funding opportunity, and that won't necessarily cover all your expenses, but you kind of use it as a means to what you said with the producer from Dublin, and kind of testing out the waters and seeing if you'd like them to then help produce their album. And I think that's a really brilliant thing to focus on with all these different funding schemes, depending on whatever level the artist may be at and whatever funding scheme is available. So that was brilliant. And then before we go on to talk, I have been meaning to say that for anybody listening or anybody watching who has any comments for Becci, Cath, Stewart, or Whiskas, please leave it in the comments, either in the Facebook or YouTube, and then I'll have a read and answer them out. So if you have any comments for everyone altogether or specific people, please leave them below and we will try and answer them.
Can I ask a question?
Pardon?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, why not?
Okay, so I'm thinking from a kind of like new band, new artist point of view. Listening to this, looking at the funding, it's really, really daunting. It sounds like it's really easy to access, but it's not. And most artists I work with in Hull have never applied for anything before or any funding whatsoever. So even the concept of applying for funding is kind of abstract. Obviously, that's something you can get used to. I'm wondering from Becci and Whiskas if, you know, what support you offer in terms of somebody that might have no experience applying, and how, you know, how them barriers can be overcome, really.
Well, shall I go first? Is that so we worked really hard when in this relaunch for Launchpad to write out some really sort of thorough guidance. So there's an idea of like what we were expecting. I mean, the Launchpad submission, you know, if it is a band that's kind of or artist that's new to these things, then, you know, assumably Launchpad is probably the entry point for support. We've worked, you know, we like to think that it is quite a simple form. The questions are pretty direct in terms of it's just tell us about yourself and what you want to achieve. You know, but it's like everyone said on this, you know, what we've become aware of having run it for a couple of years, and we've probably had close to 400 submissions over those 2 years, is that of course people still answer quite briefly and aren't given the detail. And so we have created this guidance that's now on our website, just with that expectation of the kind of things we are looking for. You know, when we talk about what the aspirations are, you know, be precise, you know, give examples, talk about where you want to be, talk about, you know, what you're trying to achieve. You know, when you're telling us about yourself, you know, do give us an idea of your achievements to date. Do talk about the music, people that you've worked with. Might not be sort of team members as Becci's talked about with Momentum and so on, but it could be, you know, promoters. Like it could just be one gig, what festivals you've done. And those kind of things, and similarly, so there's really those two questions, and then we ask questions about how you would take advantage of each of mentoring, live, and recording. And again, it's about being descriptive in terms of that. I think the other thing that we've done, which also cuts across to Momentum Accelerator, is we've in our refresh of the process just now, is we now accept video submissions. And again, we've kind of refreshed some guidance for that in terms of, you know, how long you should spend answering each question. And, you know, we're only asking for like 30 seconds for each of those questions, which is not aimed to catch you out. You know, it's not aimed to challenge you to beat the second count or whatever, but it is aimed to be like, you know, we're not looking for loads of info, but we are looking for concise info. I think probably the other thing to say is as music leads, we've been running twice monthly drop-ins for advice, and that's something that we are now looking to do beyond West Yorkshire to the rest of Yorkshire, but will probably happen after this deadline, so that's not that helpful in the short term.
Sorry, go on. Go ahead.
No, you know, this is something that we hope will, you know, obviously continue beyond the next deadline. There will be other deadlines. Sorry, Becci.
No, not at all. Sorry. I think from a PRS Foundation perspective, much like Whiskas was saying, we have a lot of guidance on our website. Our website is quite in depth and has a lot of information on there. Specifically for Accelerator, we made a conscious decision to accept video applications, and it's actually just a video application. There isn't a written element to that, whereas with PPL Momentum specifically, that is a written application because it requires a lot more detail and a lot more kind of drilling down into your plan. So for Accelerator, you know, we want to know, what do you want us to fund? You know, is it a recording? Is it kind of time out to develop your songwriting? Is it for a tour? Is it for, you know, marketing, PR to support the release of like an EP, for example, and and tell us where you see yourself in 6 to 12 months time. What are the things you would hope to kind of have as your objectives? Because as I think Cath was saying, and you, Stewart, that it is about kind of looking at yourselves as a career and as a business. So it should help you formulate in your mind kind of the different ways in which you can develop your career, and then you answer it in that way. And we're not there to catch you out. We just want to have enough information to make an informed decision, compared with others in the round, because they are generally quite competitive funding rounds. We can only fund 10% of the applications we get. Sorry, whiskas.
No, I have a question now, because you mentioned what for funding, and you talked about touring, and one of the things I was going to ask is what is the opinion on putting in for touring at this current moment in time? Okay,
so I think we're probably one of the only funders, perhaps, or maybe I might be wrong. I might be making that up. But as far as I'm aware, when not that many funders were enabling touring, like live performance, and we will allow you to apply for live performance. However, what we really want to know is what is your contingency plan, and obviously it needs to be subject to government guidance, regulations, all of those kind of things. I'm not going to suggest that you go and go to your local Irish pub and have a Kally and whatever. Just have hundreds of people in there. It's just not very reliable. It's not very safe environment to do that. However, but we do we want to support people to get back out there and do touring, and support the venues, and support the whole infrastructure, the whole ecosystem really, and that emerging artists are built on their tours and they're playing live. So it's just about you telling us what your contingency plan would be, and that you've really thought about it. So it's not likely that you're going to be touring like, I don't know, in 2 months' time. Or maybe it is, but it probably isn't. But it's about your contingency in that, and saying, we would look to do it in late 2021, but we would assess it during that time. And your project is extended for a longer period of time because of that. So in short answer, we will accept live. Yeah.
But what about with taking into account COVID-19? Let's say you did have a date in plan February 2021, but things were taken aback due to COVID-19. What is that completely fine, or?
Yeah, so we've been really flexible with our current grantees and in our latest rounds of our open fund and momentum to enable creators to come to us and say, look, this is our situation. So say, for example, we were due to do a tour October to December. That's not happening now. It's not feasible. So we want to postpone that. June next year or whatever, or 2021, October 2021. Or they're saying that to maintain that momentum and to keep that career kind of progression going and keep our audiences interested and keep the industry interested, we need to do something else, or we need to create like an EP, or we need to do whatever that might be. So as the creator, you come to us and say, actually, this is what's best for me at my career right now due to this unforeseen circumstance. If it is mainly touring, we will probably hold on to your first payment until we're sure that that's going to go ahead, rather than paying a kind of significant proportion ahead of time.
And then with regards to receiving funding, is there a time limit of when you have to complete this project, or does it lay back to what you've said in your application from receiving the funding to the end of the whole project?
For PRS Foundation, it depends on the fund. So for Momentum, it's, like I'm saying, we're talking about 3 years. So we're thinking of a 3-year plan. So we're thinking within 2 to 3 years. I would suggest for Accelerator, it would be more like a year. But that's not to say things couldn't extend past that, because time. But in general, a year, I would say, for Accelerator. And then probably it's like 2 to 3 years for main Momentum. Your activity, one thing to note, your activity, when you apply for funding, generally funders will say, this is the closing date and your activity cannot start before the decision date. So if, say, it closes on the 10th of June and they say 10 weeks, you'll get a decision in 10 weeks, think 10 weeks ahead and start your project then, because we won't fund any activity that happens in between you and us giving you a decision. And that happens quite a lot.
And then just going back quickly to, you spoke about video applications. So some of your applications are primarily video applications. Is personality taken into account with these applications?
I think there's an unconscious bias, and the team have had unconscious bias training. And I think it's a very, some people are generally more flamboyant than others and have that kind of on-camera personality. And some people are not necessarily like that. But actually, as long as you're getting, all we're really concerned about is, are you getting across who, what, why, when, where, with why now, why is this important for your career at this point in time? What have you done previously? So we want to hear the facts mainly, rather than some fan kind of, lots of GIF cats with like laser beams coming into the side of your video. Like you don't need to do that. You can just be simple. Give yourself, I don't know. Some people like to do that and others don't. It's more to do with your answers to the questions is what we're looking at, really.
Because some people argue that the video is more beneficial because then you can get across your personality, and a lot of music is personality based some of the time.
Yeah, I think we would find that it's to simplify the process mainly, because if you have not applied for funding previously, I think looking at what appears to be a massive funding application form, and ours actually aren't as big as some, it'd be really overwhelmed. Whereas just kind of talking into your phone what you want to do.
Could you repeat that little section just 30 seconds before the connection just went slightly?
I said generally kind of application forms are quite daunting. So, and our application forms are smaller than most. However, if you're going to do a video application, it might be a bit easier. Your phone thinking, it's like you're talking to your mate and saying how amazing your band is, where you want to be, like, in 12 months time I want to be playing the whole of north of England or whatever that might be. And it's a bit of an easier, kind of more accessible way for people to apply, rather than trying to fit into narrow word counts.
And I was just going to say, like, we've all most of us on this panel have been involved in assessing lots of different things, Launchpad and Momentum and so on. And what I'd say is, even the ones that aren't videos, submissions, I would generally go and check them out online. You kind of, the applications include links to Facebook pages and their music. And so that personality in that respect is through the music in that respect. So yeah.
And then Stewart, did you want to say?
Oh, you're muted, Stewart.
I think, you're muted.
Sorry. I was just going to add to the link thing. I've done it myself, and I've seen a lot of applications with it in, but links don't work. I've looked at applications and really loved them applications, and the link didn't work, and it kind of rules it out. Because I mean, me being me, I've gone online and found them anyway, but but it can really just check all the links are working that you're going to use, and also just put forward the best thing you've got. It seems obvious, but sometimes people put forward like a phone recording of a video of them playing in a local pub, but just be aware, like, what it's going to stand up against some really, really good stuff, and it's a really tough competition. So yeah, make sure your links work and make sure they're good.
Yes. And then we have a question. Sorry, Becky, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would add to that can you make sure that your music reflects your sound at that point in time. So you may have gone through a range of different genres and finding your sound. And obviously the earlier you are in your career, you may be more kind of developing in a certain way, but do not give us a link that is 7 years old that does not represent your sound now. It doesn't represent you as a tipping point. It just doesn't. So please make sure that your musical links are relevant to how you sound now, or what you want your sound to be, if it is kind of a rough kind of demo that you want to then put into like a professionally developed EP. So.
And again, like we've picked up on this a few times before, if you don't have that music ready, then you might not be ready to get that, to be at the stage to get that funding. And there is something about, I think, being patient as well, like we've said. And I think for me, I'm really proud of the fact that we're going to have Launchpad and Momentum Accelerator and Momentum like in Yorkshire. So there is that route through for artists. But equally, it's also about artists hopefully being able to see what the next step could be. And there will be artists who aren't at Launchpad stage because maybe they haven't even got a recording ready to show us or anything, because it's just going to be quite hard for us to support someone that we can't hear. But hopefully they could see that Launchpad is something to aim for, and that then after that things like Accelerator are there and so on. And so I guess the thing is not to be disheartened if you don't have everything in place for these applications that we're talking about, but think of them, I guess, as goals, as kind of as bits to get to, steps on the ladder to try and get to.
Mm-hmm. And then jumping off of what you said, Whiskas, Cath, how do you go about if you're managing an artist and about all these funds, but they potentially might not be ready for the funds that you're looking at? How do you get an artist to be ready? How do you kind of coach them? And
I guess you just see them as another goal to add to the collection of other goals. It is all about time, and it is all about being ready, without a doubt. And I think just having a clearly defined path and plan of like how you're going to do things kind of like naturally gives you those those deadlines of when you're kind of ready to apply for funding. I think once you've kind of like even tried a couple of times, like you kind of get more of a feel as to what's expected. And it's like Stu said, like ask for the feedback as well, because you should be always trying to get better at what you're doing. Like, and I think that's the same for funding applications too. I think it's just, I think it's making sure that you read exactly what that funding is for and follow those guidelines, because with particularly with the PRS Foundation funding, there's lots of different ones. So if you're not ready for a Momentum funding and there isn't an accelerator in your region, then have a look at the open funds and see if that's something that you can have a look at, which is if you're wanting it specifically for going to the studio or specifically for touring when that comes back to us. And I think it's just being aware of like what the differences are and what's available to you, and ask as well. I mean, not that I want to talk on your behalf, Becci, but like the PRS Foundation and also PPL and like Help Musicians, they all do events all around the country where you can actually go and ask somebody in real life advice on all of these different things, not just from funding, but also just revenue streams in general, to kind of find out more about royalties, to find more about what you're due. So it might not be that you actually need that big chunk of funding. You might kind of like, there might be local initiatives that you can kind of get involved with to kind of get you to that next level. So I think it's probably important to think that, as much as we are trying to kind of promote these amazing opportunities, but make sure that you're aware of all of the different opportunities. Talk to your friends in other bands and see what help they've had, because sometimes it's knowledge that kind of will put you forward. If it's if you're going for the funding and your music is amazing and you're up against somebody else whose music is amazing, the thing that you're going to fall down on is if their plan's better. And it's research is one of the most important things, I think, and you spend so much time on your music, then why would you not spend so much time trying to get it to where it should be? So I think it's just, if you're not ready for the funding, it's no bad thing. It's just that's a target. That's something that you will ready yourself for. But I think it is just like sharing knowledge And having like music leads and the team there and the Launchpad is kind of built for that. And you know, there are in all of the different regions, and there are artist development schemes, and there are different, you know, organizations and hubs that are there to kind of give you that support. If you haven't got a manager, or you haven't got any team members or anything like that, you've just got to kind of like find those people who are there to share the knowledge, basically, there to share the love.
And if I can just pick up on that, you know, part of the thing with Launchpad is anyone who applies, you know, they're making a connection with us and with the project, and we'll be sending out like regular updates on what other opportunities are available. And we've already been doing that through music leads, and we're developing that for the rest of the region as well. So, you know, there are things like you've mentioned, funding from places like Help Musicians. In the north, there's been Brighter Sound who've run mentoring programs. And, you know, we are through social media and mailing list, we are signposting towards those other opportunities as well, because they do, you know, they overlap. Some are more genre specific, you know, depending on what's running at a time, they can come at different points. So, you know, we have tried to do that. We have a other resources page on the Launchpad website that we update with those opportunities. So yeah, you know, it is just keeping your eyes on all those things.
Yeah. And then should we go to some questions, or how long do we have left, Whiskers? I didn't ask.
Does anyone have to get off?
Yeah, I did that as well. I did actually, Becci, have a question for you in regards to, because Cath, you mentioned how there are other resources to help you with the application or to help you know how to address the application. Becci, with regards to the ratio of events in north and south, in the north and south, is there a difference with how many events get put on with regards to PRS Foundation, or are they quite balanced?
We aim to be as balanced as possible. I'm Welsh, so I mean, you can't say that I'm all for my nation. So don't yeah. This I'm all about, you know, those regional hubs. So you know, we really try to ensure that we get out across the country as much as possible. I think, I mean, as with a lot of things, you might think that we're a massive team. We're really not. We're a small. Our grants team is a core team of like 4 or 5, and so we, you know, there's a lot to cover when we have over kind of 4,000 applications a year and events on top of that. So, but with webinars and stuff, we've done quite a lot of webinars recently. They're all on our Facebook page, and we do them for our other Next Steps funds like Hitmaker and the Composers Fund. And we also do them for the Open Fund for organizations and for creators. So they are on Facebook. So you probably see this face for radio talking about other funding things. But yeah, and otherwise you can email us. So we have an info@prsfoundation.com if you have any initial inquiries, and then we can get back to you. And then once you're kind of going through the process, we have other kind of direct mails for those people.
That's brilliant, though, that the email process is available to people. This is pre-application fund, I'm assuming, that you can just ask. And is it a quick reply?
We would aim, it's not very quick. It's probably about 2 weeks, I would say. So if you are inquiring about a specific fund, please don't do it on the deadline day. We're just not going to get back to you. We're not going to be able to. It's just not possible, really. So try and give yourself as much time as possible. And I do understand sometimes you see the application dates later. And I know our application date for this is less than 2 weeks. So you can drop me a line if you would like. It's Becci, BECCI @prsfoundation.com if you want further info.
Brilliant. And that is a brilliant point also. So I'm just going to quickly go over the dates and then potentially move on to questions and work through that. So for Launchpad, what is the date for this current Launchpad application?
So the deadline for submissions for this round of Launchpad is Friday, the 7th of August. So next Friday.
Mm-hmm. And can people still get in touch if they have any queries?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll aim to get back as soon as we can. Hopefully, a couple of days max, depending on how complicated the question is. But also, I do advise everyone, we spent a long time going through putting together the guidance that's on our page now, so hopefully that answers quite a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. And then Becci, any deadlines?
Sure, yeah. So the PPL Momentum Accelerator is the same day as, so the 7th of August, 6 p.m. on the dot. Our funding portal will not accept applications beyond that point, just so you know. So if that, it will just automatically not accept them. So if you do have any difficulties, just drop us a line. And then for PPL Momentum, it is the 24th of August.
Brilliant. And is there a way around that? If you submit your application on the dot of 6 p.m. and the application process has already finished and it's declined your application, is there a way of emailing someone from PRS and saying, look, I did, or is that kind of like
I would say if there's extenuating circumstances, then we can look at that. But obviously, I've just articulated that that's the exact time. So I would suggest you don't wait until dead on 6 p.m. to submit it. Really, just because we'd be inundated with hundreds of emails from people asking for extensions. So, and that's just not fair on everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And does anybody else have anything to say before we move on to questions?
Sorry.
No.
I have a lot to say all the time, but I'm not going to say it.
No, please say it. Say it. Anything. Talk about anything.
No, you're all right. No, it's cool. Let's take some questions.
Okay. So we have a question asking for somebody who has already applied for a PRS application, for example, Open Fund or Women Make Music, can they still apply for the Accelerator application if they're waiting to hear back?
I mean, you can. Generally, we don't accept if say, for example, you applied for, and there was the deadlines are at the same time. You applied for main Momentum Accelerator, and we do cross-reference, and we generally, especially on Open Fund and Women Make Music, if you apply for both of them at the same time, we may automatically reject it just due to the volume of applications that we get, and we would know that you've really thought about or contacted us to see which one would be the best for you. That said, if they've already applied for Open Fund or Women Make Music, so you can apply to Accelerator. You will find out about the Open Fund Women Make Music decisions on the 18th of August. So it would be kind of a question of, if you were successful then, or then you would be, your application would be reviewed for Accelerator. But you can apply. It's whether, if you feel that was a more appropriate fund given the knowledge that you have now, then you can. But I don't generally recommend you scattergun and apply for lots of different funds that are within the same funding kind of body, especially if they're for different levels.
Okay, brilliant. And yeah, because they do mention that they believe that this fund may be more beneficial for them than the previous fund that they had applied for.
Yeah. So
and
I think it's fine. Yeah.
And then we have another question. Would cancelled shows / tours since March be accepted as evidence of progression and development towards being accepted for Momentum or Accelerator? I just read that one straight out, so I don't know if that made complete sense.
I think it depends on, on by this point, in terms of where you are in your career to be kind of right for Accelerator level, you would have played more than those few shows tours in March, I would imagine. So therefore, that shouldn't necessarily matter, if you see what I mean. If you've already kind of been gaining that kind of regional kind of headline shows and things like that, and it's not necessarily your fault that COVID struck and they were cancelled. So, but if it was your first headline show, perhaps it's not quite. Perhaps you're not quite there yet.
And then for we have another question asking that for the team section of who is involved in your team, for Accelerator, should you mention fellow musicians as well as agents and managers that you may be working with that are part of your team?
I wouldn't necessarily suggest that. It's more about the industry kind of professionals rather than kind of fellow musicians. I guess if they'd be your collaborators, but they wouldn't necessarily be part of your team per se. That's how we would kind of see it.
Yeah. Okay. So they wouldn't qualify as somebody as part of the team.
It's more about not necessarily. It's more about kind of having like label conversations, agent conversations, and things like that. More kind of that professional side rather than the creative kind of collaboration side, I guess.
Yeah. And then with the opportunities, is there opportunity to send private links and unreleased music?
Yes. Yeah. And go on, Whiskas.
No, I was going to say, I think that just goes back to Stu's point earlier, though, is just be really careful with the links, especially with private links. I'm kind of aware of a lot of people sending kind of private setting SoundCloud things to private, but not realizing you have to get like the specific link to share. Just sharing a link that is the public link, but it's set to private, if that makes sense. I think, as mentioned, I think we receive a lot of private links that disappear before we get to review them. So if you're doing things like that, do make sure that they stay in the same place for up 2 to 3 months, really, if you want to be certain.
And then for Stewart and Cath, when you've applied for funding schemes or helped an artist to apply, have you already, let's say you're applying for recording time, have you already recorded a demo of the track, or does it depend? Is there a pressure, do you think, to record a demo of the track, even if you're asking to record that specific song?
I think if you're asking specifically for help with production and recording, I think it's good to have a demo if you're able to do demos. But like, if it doesn't kind of translate and put across what that song is about and what that song will be, then you're probably best kind of sticking to something that's showcases your band more. Yeah, I think if you're like heading towards that point where you're like recording something, particularly if you're working with somebody else, so you're not a self-produced band, like if you're kind of wanting to work with somebody else, then I think having that demo is probably really, really key for the development of the band. So you should really have that. But if you're like self-producing and you want it for like kind of mixing or mastering or like studio time and stuff, then you're going to have that close anyway. But if you just haven't got the means to do it whatsoever, I'd rather hear something that is more reflective of the band.
Yeah,
I think I agree with that, and I think if it's in response to the question from about having demos ready or still being in the writing process, I think in response to that question and a lot of the questions, what I kind of realized early on, which changed a lot for me applying for applications and funding, was to put yourself in the shoes of the funder. And why would you give you money? Like why should they give you money? Like what are they investing in? So if you've got the demos aren't ready and you're still writing them, then I presume that you've got previous work that's really good quality. So then the funder can look at it and go, well, we can trust in your development because you've already delivered to a certain level and you've already done previous work that's really good. So if you've done previous work that's really good and successful, and then you say, can we have some funding, but you can't hear the songs yet because we haven't got them ready, but look at all this other stuff we've done, which is brilliant, then that's kind of like, that's okay, I think. But if you're saying we haven't got the songs ready, we've got no other material available, you can't even hear my band, but can you give me some money? Then obviously that's not going to work. So
yeah,
I think with all of this stuff, it's about just think about how many people are applying and why should they give you money? Nobody has to give you money. So do everything you can possible to make them want to give you money.
Mhm.
Make it as solid and as airtight as you possibly can. Because obviously you're still writing as well, so that's cool. Like, but you must have previous stuff. If you haven't got previous stuff, then you're not ready for this fund, I think, maybe. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, I think it's
but
I think what writing process means as well in that. So, you know, if you have designated an amount of time to kind of like work on your next material, and like Stewart said, you've got kind of all of that stuff before that, if the writing process is there to kind of like, you know, to keep developing your band, then it's part of the journey of the band. But if the writing process is just you kind of developing and writing, then you're not ready for external support. Like, I think it's what does that mean within the project? If that's where the project is, just kind of like on a grand scale, then get that done and then start thinking about the project. But if it is kind of just, you know, part of releasing and touring and all of that stuff, then you can kind of like justify it as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was going to say, from our point of view, it's about articulating that, isn't it? You know, it's sort of, it's saying, you know, this is the form that these tracks are in. You know, they're not produced fully. That's why we want the funding, or that's why we want recording support from Launchpad or whatever. This is our track record, and that'll change. You know, if it's Momentum, Accelerator, and Momentum, you know, you're going to have really good stuff behind you. That, you know, that's less important with Launchpad, but there needs to be. It needs to be explained, kind of like where you're at and what you're wanting to get out of it, really.
Mm-hmm. And then for Launchpad, would a phone demo? Do you think that would be beneficial, or do you think just go the explaining route?
Well, the thing I'd say about something like a phone demo is, you know, is it representative of what you're trying to convey? And I think one of the struggles we have with Launchpad is we want to be accessible to artists at an early stage who have potential. And I guess there is still an element where if there isn't a way for the artist to play us the tracks in a good way, I'm not saying best way, a good way, that's going to be a struggle. If a phone demo captures something, then hopefully our reviewers would see it. If it doesn't, then it will be hard for them to see it, and hopefully that helps a bit.
Yeah.
And then another question is, applying for funding to go towards mixing, mastering, marketing of music that is still in demo form, would demos be more desirable over older music that may not represent their current sound? And that's for whomever.
Good question.
I would probably, I mean, it's...
Sorry, go on, Becci.
I mean, it's explaining where you are. For me, and from the experience that I've had, is that, you know, if they're in demo form and they're not ready, but they convey your current sound and they can do that well, you know, to a certain degree, so that the panel can see the potential of the reason why you want like the next steps, then that's fine. The problem is if the music is quite old and it isn't, it's hard for the panel to judge the quality of that new type of music. You might be great at creating you might be great at jazz, but you might not be so great at death metal. But if you're looking for, do you see what I mean? And I know they're very true, but you know, if you're looking for support and you're like, I've changed to a screamo band, it's to then listen to a jazz track and be like, well, that translates, because you can't compare. So that's the difficulty, I think.
I think when you're looking at funding for developing bands, you need to kind of capture the development. So there's an issue for me that if you've you've only submitted older music, I can't see the development of that project. I have this as well. I teach at LIPA as well, at Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, and every time I have an opportunity where I like push it out to the students and they need to send me demos, I always try to give it to the people that are kind of like showing me where they're up to now, rather than I had this really, really good track that I worked with this particular producer and it just nailed it from 3 years ago. Like, I need to see that it's happening, I think. Like, you know, I think it's like some of the applications that I've seen as well, where they've picked a song that's got the most Spotify numbers, and it might not be representative of where they are now, and that to me is always a bit of a red flag, because sometimes, you know, like sometimes songs have massive numbers because it's a bit of a fluke, like it's been used on something, or like Taylor Swift tweeted it or whatever, do you know what I mean? But like, it doesn't kind of show the progression of that artist. It just shows that they've got a lot of numbers on that one song, and it doesn't take in like that much kind of delving into to kind of pull that apart a bit if you're a little bit suspicious. So I'd kind of much rather see something current, something new that shows where that band or where that artist is wanting to go. That's what you invest in, isn't it? You don't invest in something that's already happened. You're investing in something that is their future. So I kind of want to see where that future's going, and I think that's probably more in a demo than it is in something that's been released a long time ago.
And just to back that up, like one of the things I see is quite a lot is when they've included a track that is 2-3 years old, and then they're talking about exciting plans that are going to happen soon, but there's no real mention of what's happened in between or whatever. And there might have been music in between, or there might not have. But you know, again, it's articulation. It's telling us that journey, and you know, maybe that's sometimes where the video things can be more helpful. Although I do worry sometimes that, you know, there's a potential to waffle. Then, you know, telling your life story about something, it is trying to be clear about it. But yeah.
And then a short bit of Cath, what you mentioned, and we might be reiterating ourselves, but with views of a song, of your previous song, what would you guys suggest? Would you suggest go for the track that has a lot of views so that you can show that you've had previous success and that you followed through on your creativity and your ideas, or go for a track that maybe has had a lot less views and was unsuccessful, but shows where you're going more?
Which is the best
song? The best song, yeah, straight off the bat, the best song that represents you the way that you are now. If you have smashed it with like a previous single, really, really, really well, that goes in your kind of like in a different section anyway. You don't need to wait, you know, the bit that you listen to on that song that picked up lots of support. You can kind of say, oh, I got Spotify New Music Friday on this, you know, it kind of goes in the historic bit. So if you're like, you know, trying to appeal to a funder, I mean, to an assessor that is listening to loads and loads and loads of stuff over the course of like, you know, the period that they're kind of like doing all of this, you've got to just try to grab them, like just something that's going to kind of really keep their attention and go, oh shit, this is really, really great. Like, you know, you get a very limited time with each kind of with application, but if something grabs me, I do naturally just kind of go and explore around that artist, not just from an assessment point of view, but just from an interest in music point of view as well. Yeah. So like in the same way that you're trying to kind of attract fans, that's what you should be doing with the people that are looking at your application as well. You want to entice them to kind of like spend more time in your project. So the best song always, like, I think that's just a rule of thumb across everything. When you're sending demos or anything to anybody, like, always the best track.
Yeah, can we like make a point actually of, I've had a lot of discussions, you know, I've been in bands myself and made this mistake, and also spoke to a lot of other artists and made the mistake of putting in a sentence the words throwaway track, and saying like, oh, well, we'll just put that one out. We don't really like it, but get it out of the way because we've spent 200 quid on it now and we've recorded it. So we don't want to waste it. Like, you know, you can have 20 tracks really well recorded, but if they're not good enough, don't put them out. Like, don't just put them out because they're there. Like, but that it does feel like a pressure to be like, well, we've recorded it now, we've written it, so let's get it out. And there's this thing of like, yeah, I'll get that one out of the way, but the next single is going to be brilliant. It's like, no, but everyone's going to judge you on this one, like this song. So whatever opportunity, whether it is funding or releasing, this is the song. This is the one. Every song is the one, right? So the next song is the one, like the best thing you could possibly do at that moment. Get it to the people.
But what about for the pop artists who, or whatever type of artist who thinks that, okay, currency, I need to post, I need to have my name out there, and that's how they can get the social media followings and get the support from potential opportunities such as management?
What do you mean? What's the question? Sorry.
Sorry, because I feel like there's a pressure to also just keep bringing out music. Sometimes some of it could be like,
oh yeah,
okay,
I agree.
just to have your name reiterated on social media and within blogs and whatever it may be.
I think if it's in your genre, I work with a rapper. He does grime, he does rap, hip hop, he does various genres, and he's like, I've got to put a track out a month or whatever, or whether you're putting a track out a week, whatever the genre is expecting, it's still got to be the best track you've got that week, right? It's still got to be. I think as long as you think it's the best thing you've got, it doesn't matter how often you put it out. I don't think there's nothing wrong with just churning music out. As long as it's the best you can do, you're always going to look back and kind of think how you could do it better. But I think just that belief in what you're doing, I guess my point was more just don't put anything out that you don't think is 100% good enough. And that's not just music, that's artwork, photography, just make it the best you can make it with the budget you've got, with the time you've got. And then you know that you've done the best you can possibly do. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You learn from it and move on. But just always do like the best you can do at that time, I think.
I think there is a pressure, I think, on new artists that they think they have to be releasing all of the time. And I get this a lot as well, where if a track that they release doesn't pick up an audience or doesn't do as well as they thought it would, they'll just go and put another track out. Whereas I'm a kind of more of a one that will look for further opportunities around the stuff that's already been released. So I would say that generally, if a new artist hasn't had, is feeling the pressure to kind of release something else and doesn't have something of a high enough quality to do it, rather than trying to push something new out, have they actually kind of like researched different places for that to go? Like, have they, done BBC introducing in their local area? Have they used Amazing Radio? Like, have they Googled the hell out of like similar music to see which blogs and which writers are kind of picking up on that? And generally they haven't. Just to go back to I Saw in the Jinx quickly, when I first started working with them, they'd put one single out. They'd hired a PR to do it, and it got so much press, like a ridiculous amount of press for a debut single with no like follow-up planned. So instantly I was just like, yeah, that was a really bad idea. Like, you kind of, really put yourself on the conveyor belt with nothing to follow this up. And they'd also had they'd not got a radio plugger, and they'd had no radio on it whatsoever, and they'd not even had like local introducing. So the first thing that I did before we like went back and did a second single was just look at all of the holes, look at all of the gaps of what they kind of needed, so that we were on a better platform for that second single. So it was making sure that people at Amazing Radio knew who they were, that they'd got like ours is Radio Merseyside, so they got a few plays of the debut single before we kind of go any further. So I think that's always something that you should look for, instead of trying to think, right, okay, I just need to keep releasing and keep releasing. Is just make sure that you're spending as much time as you can to actually try to connect that song with the audiences that you're looking for. And often as well, it's kind of just it's identifying who those audiences are, and it's spending time kind of like trying to work out different ways of using social media, different ways that you can showcase yourself as an artist. It's spend time kind of like really getting to the nitty gritty of how you want to present yourself to the world, rather than keep on then are ready to release that next track, that you've got more knowledge and more power to make sure that can actually do a little bit better than the last one.
And with regards to knowledge as well, the knowledge of knowing the funding opportunities and how that can maybe produce the track that you were looking to make, the quality that you were looking to make that you didn't previously, you weren't able to afford. And then we've got a few more questions, and I think we're going to try and wrap up by 9 p.m. Hopefully. But we have one from Nick Knack asking, what advice do you have for electronic artists, producers, solo artists, DJs, etc., with regard to funding opportunities?
Just quickly for Launchpad is is really just, again, just thinking about it in terms of going back to the start, maybe thinking of it in terms of audience building, because I think sometimes electronic producers, focus on what their track's doing within the scene, but don't always connect it to where the audience is and how it's building in that way. So doing that, and also I'd like to emphasize that they can come in for recording support as well. Often we see electronic producers not asking for that support because I guess it's easier for them to maybe make it on their own. But if they need that support to go into a better mixing environment or a mastering environment, we can support with that. I don't know if Becky's got any thoughts on that for momentum things.
So generally, we support behind the scenes writers and producers through our Hitmaker fund. So it's not through Momentum. We have a specific fund for those artists. You have to be creating your own, new music. So I think it what is exceptional. It appears that kind of you're a mix of like solo artist, producer, and DJ. So you kind of fit a lot of those categories. So in terms of, I would come in as a solo artist for either Open Fund, Women Make Music, or Accelerator, or Momentum. And then as kind of, if you get to that kind of next step as a producer, it would be looking at Hitmaker for behind the scenes songwriters and producers. But we do fund quite a lot of electronic now. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff.
Love. And then we have 3 more minutes, so I'm just going to ask these questions quickly, and we can have a little quick fire round. There's only 2 left. So we have a question asking, how often would an artist get studio time? Would it be once a week, bi-weekly? And if you're bi-weekly, etc., please, question mark, if you're working towards a release. So how often, bi-weekly or weekly? Or
So with Launchpad, if you get selected to get recording support, we talk to you about how we can help, and it's generally we fund a track. We fund you to make a track is what it is, and depending on what the budget is, that can stretch in different ways, and that's us. I think to answer quickly, and Becky, tell me if I'm wrong, with Accelerator and Momentum, that's what you put in within your budget.
Mm-hmm. But what if you don't complete it within the time?
For which fund are you thinking?
Let's say Accelerator.
But that's all about your project. So then you would come back to us and say there's a reason why this hasn't happened, and we'd extend the time that you can complete it. But you figure out the costs and the timing with that. We don't. That's on you to kind of figure that out, and how often you need to be there, and what that costs.
Brilliant that you'll extend it though. And then another one for you, Becky. If you've already received some funding in the past, can you still apply for Accelerator?
Okay, so if you quickly, if you've had Open Fund for Music Creators or Women Make Music, then yes. If you have had any of our next steps, which would be, or if you've had Accelerator already, no. If you've had Momentum, I'm afraid not. If you've had Hitmaker, I'm afraid not. If you've had Composers Fund, I'm afraid not. On our fund would be Open Fund and Women Make Music, then yes, or any of our early career funding support, then yes.
Brilliant. I think that wraps it up, unless anybody wants to quickly say anything within the... No?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think if there are any questions after this, or anyone's watching this on repeat and they want to fire us a question, Becky gave her email earlier. You can email us at hello@launchpad-music.com as well. So good luck, everyone.
Yeah. Yes, thank you everyone for listening and watching, and thank you everyone, Whiskas, Stewart, Cath, and Becky, for taking part.
Thank you.
I'll say all. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Thank you.